First Lady of the Republic of Botswana, Mrs. Jane Masisi. Honorable Ministers here. Honorable Assistant Ministers, Members of Parliament, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, heads of international organizations, the Executive Vice President, Diamond Trading, De Beers Group, Mr. Paul Rowley, the De Beers team present here today, all permanent secretaries, the First Lady's special guests, namely the University of Botswana Valedictorian 2020, Ms. Ruth Alfred, Women's Issues Activist, Ms. Bone Rasisigo, Innovation Specialist and Mechatronics Engineering Graduate, Ms. Kamelo Makati. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. I'm your moderator for today, and my name is Matlhogonolo Mponang. In line with Botswana's Vision 2036 and the De Beers Group commitment to enabling inclusion and diversity in its partner countries, the engagement of women in business and leadership is crucial to the success and sustainability of any economy. The De Beers Group recognizes that it is critical that a shared focus and vision of all involved stakeholders, delivering programs and initiatives targeting women and girls be achieved. It is to this end that sessions such as this one, where we can convene and discuss issues that are pertinent to us, continue to be held. The W Summit is an initiative that the De Beers Group has utilized since 2016 to engage women in business and leadership towards facilitating an enabling environment for profit and purpose. The summit brings together diverse women from Botswana, the region, and the world at large to deliberate on various opportunities for impact, to further deliberate on the challenges affecting communities and the consolidated approaches which can create sustainable income flows in the areas of innovation, entrepreneurship, and business leadership. It has been said that if it seems that we have seen farther than most, it is because we stood on the shoulders of giants. There's actually a man who said that, ironically, Isaac Newton. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you one of those giants, the First Lady of the Republic of Botswana, who is also the patron of the W Summits, Mrs. Jane Masisi. The First Lady is an accountant by profession who has worked for leading organizations within the private sector in Botswana. Driven by her quest for international exposure, she further embarked on a career as an international civil servant with the United Nations, serving in 3 countries over a span of 14 years. These countries are namely the United States of America, Ethiopia, and the Central African Republic. Mrs. Masisi started her career with the Botswana Diamond Company, where she worked at the world-acclaimed Jwane Mine and moved on to other sectors involving earth-moving machinery, hospitality, and beverage production. Mrs. Masisi began her United Nations career at the UN headquarters in New York in the United States, later relocating to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to join the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. In 2013, inspired by the need for change and new experiences, she accepted an assignment with the Integrated Peace-Building Office in the Central African Republic, BENUCA, in Bangui. This was at the height of conflict in the war-torn Central African Republic. She cites it as one of her most life-changing experiences. Mrs. Masisi has taken a break from her international service since March 2018 to support her husband in his new role. She is committed to issues involving children, in particular the girl child, youth and women empowerment. Since 2019, Mrs. Masisi is the United Nations AIDS Special Ambassador for the empowerment and engagement of young people in Botswana. Mrs. Masisi is also a member of the Organization of African First Ladies for Development. She sits on the International Council of Global Hope, which serves to address childhood cancer and blood disorders, including the provision of infrastructure in the improvement of pediatric cancer care in Africa. In addition to her CIMA qualification, Mrs. Masisi holds an MBA from De Montfort University, and during her youth, she was an active member of Junior Chamber Botswana, joining chapter, where she became the national treasurer. Besides work, Mrs. Masisi enjoys traveling, swimming, playing tennis, reading, helping others, and spending quality time with family. She married His Excellency Mokgweetsi Eric Kiabetswe Masisi on the 3rd of January 2002, and they are blessed with a daughter, Atsile. Please join me in inviting the First Lady of the Republic of Botswana, Mrs. Nell Jane Masisi, to deliver the keynote address.
Honorable ministers here present, members of parliament, members of the diplomatic corps, heads of international organizations, heads of civil society organizations, the De Beers group leadership, senior Botswana government officials, captains of the diamond industry, teams from the private sector, our esteemed panelists, the W Summit friends around the globe, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. To you all, I wish a very good afternoon, a good morning, a good evening, depending on the time zones where you are seated. I'm honored to be with you today, albeit virtually, for the launch of the inaugural virtual De Beers W Summit, being the 5th W Summit to be held. This mode of meeting and interacting forms part of the long list that comes with the new normal, which has been brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. The W Summit continues to be a significant platform that brings together delegates from all over the world, in its own way celebrating and affirming the diversity and talent that exists across the globe. It is this very diversity, particularly as it brings women together with different stories and perspectives, that makes me value these interactions immensely. The summit is marked as one of the flagship events on my calendar year on year. Just last year, we convened here in Gaborone, in person, for this very convention. What a delight it was. Who would have thought that a few months later, we would be where we are today? This is the new normal. We had to pack away all those grand plans we had made and plan afresh. To the De Beers Group and their partner, Botswana's Ministry of Mineral Resources, Green Technology and Energy Security, we really appreciate that the COVID-19 pandemic did not deter you from putting up the summit this year. I'm pleased to note that we have delegates coming from all corners of the world joining us for the W Summit, from the De Beers partner countries of Botswana, of course, Namibia, South Africa, and Canada. We also have delegates from the USA, Europe, UK, and Southeast Asia. To all of you, a very hearty welcome. This Women's Forum has over the years become well known in local and international circles, and now noted as one of the most popular events on the social and business events calendar. It attracts a diverse audience, extensive media coverage, and social benefits for implementing partners. The primary objectives of the W Summit, just to recap, is to engage and collaborate with women and a few good men in business and strategic leadership across various sectors and countries, to showcase personal, professional, and business successes and milestones, to provide a networking platform for women in business and strategic leadership, to create linkages, alliances, and strategic partnerships. So we hope it doesn't end here. It's also to provide a safe space where women can talk openly about some of the challenges that we as women experience. In a way, a girls' club. And why not, since the men have their own boys' clubs? Looking back at recent months, we read about and we hear about, we experience the hard COVID-19 pandemic impacts, the challenges that are being experienced by disadvantaged groups and those most vulnerable in the society have been exacerbated. Women in particular have felt the most burden during this pandemic. As a citizen of the world, a responsible one at that, I believe that this requires intervention. As my when you get, give, and when you learn, teach. The world has reached a point where giving, caring, and showing compassion to others has become a compulsory assignment for all of us at the individual level. Bringing all of you together at this summit is a demonstration of the commitment that corporate citizens, such as De Beers Group and others, have in supporting the economic aspirations of Botswana and the need to develop and motivate various segments of the society, thus contributing to facilitating solutions for the societal trials that may exist. A prevailing societal trial to cite. Recent reports in the media, as well as research shared by international organizations, indicate how the world is battling a shadow pandemic of gender-based violence, GBV. The current GBV levels have brought to the fore the long-existing power imbalances in our societies. Sadly, Botswana ranks second highest in the world in terms of rape incidents per 100,000 cases. A pity, because we are supposed to be one of the shining diamonds of Africa. GBV is not only a blatant violation of human rights, it has consequences for the victims, their families, and nations as a whole. It is for this reason that it has to be tackled, and tackled in a very speedy manner. Let us also give thought to this. What is your personal contribution in ending this shadow pandemic? At this point, let me share with you my personal contribution towards the fight. I embarked on a cycling exercise, taking along mayors in a number of towns around the country to raise awareness on issues related to gender-based violence and child sexual abuse, while also engaging with stakeholders. I deliberately used an unconventional mode in an effort to capture the attention of a wider number of people. As leaders in our respective businesses and locations, we need to use platforms such as these and others, which are available to us. We all know social media is one of the extremely powerful ones, to come up with how we can be part of the long-term solution. As women, we need to continue to rise in our capacity as leaders in civil society, the private sector, the public sector, and other spheres, to look at how we can help each other thrive in these environments where we grow, where we are supported, and where we are protected. For most of us, 2020 presented a year's experience like no other in our lifetimes, testing us to the limit. At the same time, I hope for a lot of us, it has compelled us to awaken the giants within us. Remember Anthony Robbins' book? That we must be tapping deep into our hidden and unknown potential and bring about total transformation in our lives and the lives of others. As we do so, let us also take others along with us, especially other women. We know, well, the women world over have experienced challenges of many forms, and the COVID-19 pandemic has only amplified these challenges and brought them closer to the fore, but they have long existed. These challenges, we all know, but let's just remind each other what these challenges are. It's women's access to healthcare and education. It's equality for the law. It is, of course, gender-based violence, cultural norms and traditional practices that undermine women, especially in this part of the world. Respect of women's autonomy regarding control of sexual rights, workplace, gender, and business inequalities. I'm sure all those sound very familiar. This virtual room hosts many game changers, women who relish the opportunity to pioneer new ways of thinking, women who are innovative, who challenge the norms that disadvantage those most vulnerable in society. Ladies use that power and strength to influence and change the world for the better. I'm in the presence of people who have been critical to the execution of projects, initiatives, or milestones that have turned around organizations and will continue to do so well into the future. I therefore appeal to you to continue in this high performance mode All this in the spirit of improving the lives of vulnerable groups around the world, particularly those of other women and girls who do not have the same opportunities that we have. With these remarks, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to declare the first virtual W Summit officially opened. I appreciate everyone for having taken the time to connect through today. I wish you all good health. Have a safe and happy festive season with your families. And for 2021, all the best as we all make those drastic shifts to accommodate the new normal in all aspects of our lives. Thank you. Merci beaucoup, shukran, and share. Thank you.
Thank you, First Lady Masisi. It is indeed true that when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. We've just drank from a well of wisdom. Thank you very much. In the next part of the session, I'm going to have a conversation with some powerhouses. And yes, I know the word powerhouse is abused, disabused, overused, but trust me, these women are powerhouses. They are in no particular order. Katie Fergusson, Senior Vice President, Sustainable Impact, DBS Group. Balsam Ayoub, Founder, Balsam International, Kuwait. Naseem Lahri, Managing Director, Lucara, Diamonds, Botswana. Petronella Matumo, Managing Director, Private Collection, Botswana. Maserame Mouyeme, Director, Group Marketing, Corporate Affairs and Sustainability, Old Mutual Limited, South Africa. The panel theme is Leading Through the Challenges of 2020 as one continues to maintain stability and balance whilst staying resilient, I find that very interesting. I'm going to start with you, Naseem. I'm a firm believer that if your path demands you to walk through difficulties, walk as if you own the place. I don't know if you agree. As a woman in leadership, what have you had to endure during this period, and how has your leadership style adapted? Naseem.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and afternoon, First Lady Jane Masisi, and all protocol observed. Thank you for that, Matlhogonolo. You know, it has been a very, very challenging year. I don't think any one of us could ever dream of running through a pandemic and leading through a pandemic. I mean, generally, it's very difficult to lead as a woman, and then a pandemic gets thrown in, right? So very, very close to what you're saying is we had to be resilient, and we had to show that we knew what we were doing, even though we didn't, right? You had to be in front of everyone, and you had to be resilient and understand the environment that you're working in. And you know, the one thing that I realized the most about being in this pandemic is that as a leader, you needed to be flexible, you needed to listen, and you needed to lead with passion. And the passion came through from taking your people first. And you know, in this pandemic, it was all about the people, because it was about the health and well-being of your people. So for me, leading in this pandemic, you know, none of us knew what would come the next day. It was about being flexible and understanding what was out there. And I think, you know, just as women, we generally research a lot, and we need to be on top of our game as usual, always. There's never a time we're never on top of our game, and we all know that in this panel. And I think what really drove me to lead, and you know, you started off very well. You know, I had to make sure that even though I didn't know, I needed to pretend that I knew what I was doing. And I was in an environment where I needed to lead, and I needed to show a brave face, even though I was breaking inside, right? And you know, we started off seeing all the countries around us locking down, and we needed to be ahead of the rest. So you've got to gather your resources, ensure that you're close to your stakeholders, and communication is so key. Collaboration with everyone was key to make sure that the safety of your people was number one. And I think what we did really well at the time was that we sat down and understood that there were lockdowns coming through. And through that, in order to be resilient and leading the pack, is that we were, again, an essential service, so we were not closing. So how do we lead our teams without fear? And, you know, I had to make sure that And that was so important because everyone was fearful in the pandemic. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what was going to happen after the lockdown. It was so uncertain. And I think as women, you know, change is very key to us. We love working in uncertainty, and we're always on top of things in uncertainty. And what helps us the most as women is that we collaborate and we communicate with each other and we ask the right questions. And that's so important. Never fear to ask the right questions, or never fear to ask the wrong questions, because that may lead you to the right answer, right? So that's what we did. We 3 weeks before the lockdown, we actually prepared for a lockdown. So we were working into a lockdown at least 2 weeks prior to that. And we got the teams ready. We set up crisis management teams, all those nice things that we did, and ensured that our people came first. But guess what? Because of fear, I was probably the wicked witch of the West, specifically because we were running through a pandemic, through a lockdown. And the anticipation was that we would close down operations. And we didn't. So here I am sitting here and shivering, thinking, oh my God, my people are going to hate me for letting them work through a pandemic. What I did is I stood strong with a brave face, and I communicated. I communicated more than I ever did in my entire life. I just spoke to the people. We communicated and communicated and communicated. And I'll use that word very often, as you see, because that creates resilience, right? And the one thing I told my team is that we are all leaders in this battle. There was not one of us that was an employee of a company. We were all leaders to ensure sustainability of the organization. And I think that got us through, because then you get the people coming on board. And the more you communicate and the more you make people understand that every day is a different day. Let us be flexible and let us change as things change. You know, we got into the lockdown, I can't even remember the date now, but when we got into the lockdown, we're actually working in a lockdown scenario 1 week before. So we were prepared. But even with all that preparedness and all the information that we had at the time, people were still fearful. And I think because of that fearfulness of the people, we just communicated to make sure that people understood where we were at. And I think it was the resilience of my team and the support of my team. And, you know, you can't do this alone. It's about collaboration and teamwork again. It was all of us getting together and making sure that our teams understood what we were getting into. And it was every day that we communicated to our teams. I sat here in Gabs. We did live broadcasts to make sure that people understood exactly what was happening on a daily basis. And I swear, 2 weeks down the line, I think I was the queen of the organization, because people actually believed in what I was doing and the techniques that we were using. You know, we were already long sanitizing, we were long social distancing, we were wearing masks. You know what an issue the masks were. People kept on telling me that it's going to bring they're going to get viruses and God knows what with a mask on their faces. When we actually came out of the lockdowns and we were open, guess what? Everyone was mandated to wear a mask. Everyone was sanitizing. Everyone's temperatures were being taken. And we were already living in that organization. So when people ask me, how was the lockdown? I don't know, because I didn't go through a lockdown. That was life for us from day one. And I think, you know, what's important is that we communicate. And the most important thing is to actually get information from everyone. And that's where I got a lot of support. And you know what? The women in the organization, the women out there in the diamond industry, we all communicated. We communicated with our stakeholders, meaning the government, which was very key for us, specifically the Ministry of Health, to assist us, to take us through this process. And I think it was, you know, we always talk about communication, but I think for me, what really helped us the most was the collaboration between our people, the communities, and the stakeholders, meaning governments, as well as other mining operations that were here. So that helped a lot, and we needed to talk. And that for me was very, very important.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Naseem. I want to now move on to Katie. I know for a fact that you are a believer in this next sentiment. How we walk with the broken speaks louder than how we sit with the great. What have you seen other women endure during this period, and how have you supported them? Katie, over to you.
Thanks, Matty, and thank you to the First Lady for such an inspiring speech to start. And good afternoon, everybody, and fellow panelists. Yeah, I mean, I think it's already been said, it's been a very intense year, and I think we should all be very proud of ourselves that we've been resilient and made it through. I think in terms of you know, endurance, as the First Lady said, I think we have seen in many cases a disproportionate impact on women through this pandemic. I think from a professional perspective, I've got many peers who were in a lockdown situation for many months, having to work, many hours a day, 10, 11 hours a day, on the COVID response while their partners were working with young children at home, having to homeschool. I think we've all found, and I'm sure this really resonates with everybody, those informal networks and peer support. Humor goes a long way, a really long way. I think also really important, everybody went through their good days and everybody went through their bad days. And I think being open about your bad days, sharing your chaos, that sometimes things are working well and sometimes there's chaos all around you, I think really helped people to get through it and not feel alone. I think for younger women in the organization, it's been interesting. Quite a few of them have approached me, I think working away from the office and not being able to, check in with people as regularly and be so visible, the dreaded imposter syndrome that everybody experiences sometimes, has definitely been more of something that more people have experienced, during this process. And I think as women leaders in organizations, it's really important that we make sure younger women are still able to be visible and their work is still being visible and being seen, even though we're not all seeing each other in the office all the time. And then, of course, there's outside of that, I'm incredibly proud, I think, and one of the huge silver linings of this year for me has been just seeing the level of collaboration right across De Beers, across Anglo-American, across, partners in Botswana, Namibia, South Africa and Canada. The speed at which people moved and people who were not used to collaborating, having to work together to get testing machines across borders and PPE and medical supplies and food parcels and everything was just, I don't think we would have thought we could have done it in the space of time with which we actually did it. And I think, it's been amazing to see really what can be achieved, even with us all working virtually when we all work together. So that's been a real highlight. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. I want to now turn to Member Matumo. In our culture in Botswana, I can't exactly call you by your first name, but for purposes of those assisting us, Petronella, Member Matumo, I know that you eat business for breakfast. I know this for a fact. How have your different businesses, because I know there are many, been doing during these tumultuous times? Member Matumo. Petronella, for Dave.
Good day. Thank you very much, Mati. To our First Lady, Memma Zile, good afternoon to you. To everybody on our panel, the other ladies, and to whoever is listening out there, welcome to this event. You are right, I do sit on a couple of, wear different hats. And business has been very, very interesting. For instance, in one of the businesses that I chair the board of, a listed company, we have had to look at that business and say to ourselves, here we are, how are we going to be socially responsible in terms of tenants? This is a property business. How are we going to be socially responsible in terms of the tenants that we have within our premises? Are we just going to sit back and say, we don't mind what's happening out there, just go ahead and continue to pay the rents? Or are we going to adapt? And we really did adapt. We managed to maintain all the tenants that we had. And this was all about collaboration, understanding, social responsibility, and making sure that all those tenants are still out there in the future. At a more personal level with private collection, again, it's just been, as it's been repeated already, it's about transparency with the staff, with our suppliers, or with our other fellow stakeholders, and really saying, this is what the reality of our situation is. How can we work together to try and make sure that we're sustainable? The employee relations have improved tremendously. When I say that meaning that, as it's been said, once you're communicating, once you're sharing, once you're being honest about the fact that you don't know what tomorrow is going to be, you actually do get a very positive response, because people do understand that we're in this together. So that level of unity was just incredible. I also look at the issue of trust. I believe that worldwide, the level of trust is growing every single day. Can you imagine that in this day and age, we're sitting there and having to adapt and say, I am sending goods out to somebody who has paid me, or somebody who's going to pay me, and they're across the world. It's not somebody who's just come into our retail outlet or come into our manufacturing. So I believe that the changes that are being made are about building trust worldwide. It's quite amazing how much the world is going to have to trust each other and without knowing each other. And that for me is really, really incredible. I think I'm very optimistic when I look at what is happening within our businesses. And the reason I say this is that the resilience is there. People are, they're ready to try out new things. Disruption came, COVID has come, but what that has done is it has refined business and how you do business, how you balance your business. This is what the new normal is. This is what people are going to have to do. I have an argument constantly with my husband. I hate the word capitalist. I really hate that word. But, he's a socialist and he keeps talking and using it constantly. But I think when we look at what is happening, the stability that needs to come out in the world, I think it's going to be about balancing social, balancing employment, and balancing resilience, balancing stability, balancing profit. We're going to be spending a lot more time trying to balance our lives, a lot more than what we have done in the past. It's no more about the organization. It is about the others that are with us. I mean, the health issue that COVID has brought, yes, we all have social responsibility, but we've had to take it, in my situation, to a level where you're saying to the staff, how do you live? Are you living in a community? Are you living in a single household? What are you doing in terms of your own personal hygiene, educating those that you live with? You're constantly mentoring, you're constantly teaching, you're constantly trying to make sure that we look after each other at that level. I do not believe that we were looking after each other to that same level before. We came to our workplaces, we left, yes, we interacted socially, etc., etc. But now we have to do it for everybody within an organization. And I think, again, that is something that is about bringing balance to an organization. So, I look and I think to myself that this is a better world that we're going to. It's definitely different, and it's definitely more exciting, and it's definitely more meaningful, deeper. It requires a lot more from each of us. And whether our relationships are with our suppliers, whether our relationships are with, shareholders, but definitely there's a deepening of relationships. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Matumo. I think you have said it beautifully. You are really speaking about the confluence of all these political, economic ideologies, a better world. I think, you know, what I liked also about what Katie said was to basically get into taking the elevator down. As we progress as women, we need to take care of each other. And I think the First Lady spoke to that as well. Naseem, you spoke to the wisdom of the crowd. Now, I want to move on to Member Mouyeme. And I want to know, in your opinion, and this is us not trying to blame anybody, but us taking responsibility for our own self-determinism. What barriers hinder women's success, and how can we bring those barriers down whilst maintaining balance? What barriers hinder women's success, and how can we bring those barriers down? Member Mouyeme, Maserame, for you, Dave.
Thank you, Mati. Good afternoon to the First Lady and the panelists and all the other people that have joined us from different parts of the world. You know, when we think about women, we think about challenges. So you can imagine what happened to women leaders and everyday women during this period that we have all experienced in almost a similar way across the world. From a leadership perspective and for women in business, we know how hard it is to be in a boardroom where you are a minority. Now, we are generally very warm and giving and want to do the right thing. And at times, your voice becomes that singular voice. What happened with this pandemic, it's actually brought those women issues even more to the fore when you consider how many of us are affected and also how many of us that we know about that are affected by this pandemic. So for me at a personal level, it's been a journey of self-understanding, a journey of self-reflection, but also bringing me so close to other women that have gone through the same thing. We're talking about networking, and Katie referred to that. So suddenly WhatsApp became a favorite platform for connecting and sharing experiences and being there for each other. In some instances, at a professional level, especially for women that are heading sustainability, for me, it was about sharing ideas and saying, so what's your organization doing? How can we collaborate? How can we work together? And bringing that together and being able to make a bigger difference. And I think that showed me how even more agile we are as women, especially women in business, because we had to come through, look at what our families were going through, look at what the companies that we head up or are part of were going through. But also for a woman like me who grew up in Orlando East in Soweto, I had to bring that into the picture and try to understand what could be done by women in business, supporting those women that are in townships that are going through hardships, and ensuring that all the work we did partnering with government, whether it be the education department, health department, also took care of women. So for example, in South Africa, the biggest instability was in the health and education systems. In health, we made sure that women that were at the forefront of healthcare also were catered for. We do know what happens when the resources are limited, and that you find most of the resources being inadequately given to women. But the women, when you go to clinics in the townships, when you go to hospitals, they are the ones that are, fronting most of those that need help. Same on the education system. In South Africa, you have a whole lot of young kids taking care of families, and a neighbor who could be a woman would be the one, providing food. So we worked with these leaders in communities and made sure that these children that used to get a single meal at school every day had food. So that brought a bit of stability And when we started looking at the intervention on education with things like online learning, it is the women that would ensure that these kids at least had a little bit of money to go online and get, you know, some of the lessons they needed. But it got harder when you looked at rural areas where most of the households were led by women, and these women had absolutely no resources. But I think for me, stability is if all the needs are catered for, whether it's psychological, whether it's economical, and bringing that together. And I think women at our level have an even bigger role to play as we move forward, because this pandemic is not gone. In South Africa, for example, the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, and a large part of Gauteng are still impacted. So our job is not done yet. I think what's important to bring a bit of stability to these women-led households, to these households that are led by young girls, is just to stay in touch and make sure that our organizations are aware of what's happening on the ground and supporting them. And by so saying means that even though we are concerned about our own health and safety, just keep in touch and ensure that we are the voices that they need. It's a very tough period for women overall, but I think the little that we can do and continue doing can transform lives. So stability, I think is a wish that we all want, but it's not going to happen. You know, we will continue being unstable. What's important, I think, is agility. Just being able to seize the moment, do the best that we can, but also take care of ourselves. I realize that I'm not a superwoman. You know, by working from home has proven to me that I have my limitations and that there are things that I can do very well and that there are things I cannot do. And I own up to those things I cannot do. Those that I can do, I try to clarify in my mind what the outcome is and make sure that I do what needs to be done, and own up to what I cannot do, because we are just human. We are women, but we're just human like everyone else. So we are not super women and we're not powerhouses. Mati, you said that earlier, you know, that sometimes we think we are, but we're just human beings trying to make a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mema Mouyeme. I find it fascinating, your name, Mema Mouyeme, because it's actually a Cameroonian last name. And I pronounce it like a true Motswana, just because your first name is Tswana Soto. But you'll bear with me. Balsam, what is your opinion, particularly given the part of the world that you live in? I think us as Botswana, from a prima facie perspective, we often take it for granted that peace is a foregone conclusion. And this is not to say that there's no peace in your environment, because there are many forms of peace. But given everything that we are speaking about, what is your opinion of the new norm of creating stability or agility, as Mouyeme just said? Balsam, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure seeing you all today. Hi, Mrs. Masisi, the First Lady. It's a great honor to see you again. I wish to see you all in Botswana soon. And I still have my little souvenir from Botswana, keeping it in my house. Always. So, yeah, everyone knows that the pandemic was really a new, creating for us a new lifestyle, which affects us in a good way or in a bad way, in a time or another. But me personally, my experience come from the civil society, from the sport and the sport field, and also the business and the management. In the pandemic, especially when it happens, it was in the middle of everything that we were in the world, not only in Kuwait, but in the whole world. So for me, delaying and canceling all the stuff that I was dealing with and be locked down, it was a little bit hard. But I find other things to do. And when we talk about the pandemic, especially, we also know that people had really affected by their mental health. And so that's why I joined initiative in Kuwait. They established it, which is the Corona Care Kuwait, and it was one-to-one sessions for people who was really for the front lines. And for the people in general who were having a certain problems in their mental health and their social life. So most of the people who I talked to in that day were women, and they had been explained so hard and talking about their responsibilities, the situation they're in, the violence they're having from their brothers or husbands or people who are around us, around them. So I really worked hard because I had also founded an initiative called Be Strong in 2015 for ending violence against women. And it was in a cooperation with Ending Violence Against Women campaign in the United Nations in Kuwait. So when I established it, I had also focused on ending violence against women. And when the pandemic happened and when I was in Corona Care, trying to help those people on the one-to-one sessions, most of those people were women. Let's say if there was 10 sessions, 2 will be men and 8 will be women. So for me, that was really a wake-up call to raise the awareness of how can we work hard to fight violence against women. So my focus was on the mental health awareness, the violence against women, the women's sport, and the gender equality. We cannot reach none of those things without the basic thing, which is gender equality. And for me, the lockdown was a very good opportunity for women as mothers and also men as fathers to sit down with their children and explain with them what does it mean to empower a woman, what does it mean to be a part of a recognized part. The lady just now, she said, when we think about women, we think about challenges. Yes, it's always a challenge for people to find solution for women because they're always having they're always being ignored in the sports field. Me, as a board member, I'm the only woman as a board member in 15 sports club. Each sporty club in Kuwait have 11 members. So imagine I'm the only woman between all of them. And I have been created history to be a board member. And I have teams now. We are the leading club in Kuwait Sporty Club. We are the leading club in Kuwait to have women team. We had won the league in February, and now we started the league again for the futsal for women. So it is not easy also to bring again women in the sports field after the lockdown. When you create for them a space, when you create for them an environment and encourage them to come to the club, and then this is all smashed for 8 months or 7 months, and then you again operate their minds and their lifestyle to come again to the club. It was a huge challenge for me to gather the team and to gather the women again and to encourage them to involve into the sports again. The thing that I want to say is Yes, it is a challenging period. 2020 had enough surprise for us. It was really a very tough year, but also with all the challenges we had faced, we had get out with a new lessons. So we had learned how to get over the challenges that we face, how we find solutions. I will tell us a very small story about in the lockdown. I was in the supermarket in Kuwait, and I was putting on my mask, doing my shopping. And then I see next to me a young gentleman who was moving down his mask, trying to talk in front of the phone. He was putting his phone in front of him, and he was trying to talk. And then I discovered that he is from the mute and deaf. He is doing the sign language to communicate with the person in front of his camera. So I went back home and I was thinking, why it's so hard for those people to have a comfortable way of communication, why we should put them in danger or in challenges to communicate with the people in general. So I went home and I searched about mute and deaf masks, and I didn't find at that time. So I create my own mask. That was the first pattern that I made. And then I develop it until it's become a different style, which I don't own it now, but the Surgeon Corporation in Kuwait, the women surgeon committee, they had taken from me and they had approved it to do a research about it and to use it as an official mask for people and the tenants.
Great stuff. Great
Yeah.
stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's so inspiring. You see, the greatest innovations, they come out of a sense of necessity. I want to go back to you, Naseem, to actually ask you another question related to the boy child. Oftentimes, I just believe, I think it was Mema Matumo who spoke about the fact that her husband is a socialist, and he speaks a lot about capitalism and how everything in life is really a balance of or a confluence of different elements. I also, just having looked at this topic, what excited me about it was to also be able to ask this question. To what extent, Naseem, do you think the boy child or the male person needs to participate in this conversation? And in what form would you see that conversation happening, either within your organization or within your own personal life? Over to you, Naseem. Naseem?
Famous words of 2020. I'm on mute. Thank you for that question. I think it's a very, very good question, actually. You know, we talk about the boy child. I have a son as well, right? So he's a feminist, as I'm sure you know that. And, it's about educating the boys. And I think what's quite key right now, and, we always say, what are the challenges that women have at this point in time? Yes, previously we had a lot of challenges, right? And I think as we go along with time, and you see the most amazing women on this panel here, and we are paving this pathway for all women. And as we do that, we've got to create the same pathway for the boy child. So for me, it's very, very important. I always get asked the question, when I'm in an interview, do I take preference to women? No, I don't. I create equal opportunity for everyone. And I think as we go along, we need to do that. And it's a very, very key thing that we need to do. As women, we understand what it is to work in a male-populated, I won't say dominated, but a male-populated world. And likewise, we're seeing that changing, right? We're seeing women coming more to the forefront. And it poses an issue for males as well, right? And I think now with what is happening in the world today, we have a very progressive generation of males. And through that, I see that in my own home. My daughter doesn't have any limitations. She can do anything. And likewise, when my son sees her, she has no limitations, right? He knows that she can do absolutely anything. So I think as we go along, this is the communication or the education that we need to take along. And I've learned this a lot with the GBV campaigns that we have. It's not about only talking to the females. We need to talk to everyone. It's about the females, it's about the males, and telling them what's right and wrong. And I think even when we do talk about gender equality, it's about talking to both. And I think the generations that we're raising right now understand that. And that's quite key, because the males do understand that we are women and we're very strong in our personalities. And they need to know how to deal with that. And, we're living in a world where, I currently, and I heard the lady before me talking about the fact that she's the only female in the boardroom. I grew up in that environment. And now guess what? We only have one man in our boardroom. So we're progressing. And as we progress, yes, I like to laugh because we did laugh because about 2 years ago, I was the only female in the boardroom. Now the poor gentleman is the only rose in the boardroom, right? Which is a great thing, right? And what we need to do as females as well, as we need to lead equally because we know what challenges we faced. And this is how we bring the equality into place. We talk about gender equality. It starts from us because we know what it's all about. And I think we're maternal. We understand that very well. We grow, as mothers, we don't only raise females, we raise males. And as we raise our male children, we need to tell them what the world is about. And it's better when both male and female participate. And I think for me, it's about education. Thank you.
Yeah. In fact, you raise a very valid point because it's said that the most diverse organizations in the world tend to be a lot more progressive. And while I'm on that, I want to bring Katie into this organization, into this conversation rather. And you might want to unmute Katie because I see you're on mute. And as you answer this, please speak to some of the work that you've done in the inclusion and diversity space. Because one of the things that I love about DBS is that we do make life brilliant and we do strive to be a very inclusive and diverse organization. Maybe you want to speak to that, Katie?
Yeah, thanks, Matty. I mean, absolutely. As you said, I think it's a really important focus for us, and I think we take a very integrated approach across equity, inclusion, and diversity. So it's within our workforce, within our communities, and increasingly within our brands and our marketing as well. Because I think we've seen you can't actually separate those if you want to have a meaningful impact. I completely agree with Naseem on the importance of involving men in the conversation. We've partnered for the last 3 years with UN Women's He for She program for exactly that reason, to really encourage all the fantastic men we have in the organization to really be part of being a proactive part of breaking down these barriers. I think that's even more important when we're talking about the shadow pandemic that the First Lady quite passionately said, what are we as individuals going to do? Because I think the greater incidence of that during lockdown has really made everybody stop and think about that. We've been doing a lot of work, like many of the other organisations, on that, and working with organisations across all 4 countries. And the one of the key areas we've seen have real breakthrough is working with men as role models within their communities. Men who are influential in the soccer clubs, traditional leaders, and so on. When they stand up and they are part of raising awareness and advocating for change and urgent change, that's where you really see that difference start to happen. So I think everybody really needs to be part of that, and men absolutely equally with women.
Absolutely. And I know, thank you for that, Kate. And I know, Naseem, you do quite a lot of work, not just within the particular demographic of just men or women. I know you do a lot of work with people that live with, I don't want to say disabilities, but people that have certain born traits that are not necessarily the norm. I know you've been very progressive in that regard. I'd like to now move on to Member Matumo. I think before I've got at least 15 more minutes of your time. I don't want to give any of it back to you because before I close, I'd also like to maybe give the First Lady an opportunity to impart some knowledge regarding this topic that we've been covering. Member Matumo, what have you seen in the boardroom? What is your perspective on the question that I just posed to both Naseem and Katie?
What I have seen in the boardroom is that the boardroom is really about ideas and about who brings the ideas. Over the many years, I have actually worked in very male-dominated environments and found that women have to actually go beyond looking at themselves as women or the men looking at themselves as men. It's really about the ideas, the issues, and learning how to articulate these ideas and issues at a strategic level. And it really comes with experience, it comes with being given the opportunity to participate. And I think if you look at people, whether it's in a family setting or any other setting, if you're given the opportunities, both male and female, you will learn certain quality traits. You learn about governance. Governance is neither male nor female. You learn about participating with and bringing across positive ideas. That is neither male or female. You learn how to give, say for instance, you're chairing a meeting, you learn how to make sure that all voices are heard. These are neither male or female. And I think we need to, in the future, we need to be able to teach people how to be business people, both the males and the females. And we also need to be able to bring our children up to understand what business is all about, so that by the time they go and enter into those environments, they do have an understanding of what business is all about. I grew up in an environment where I had a matriarch of a grandmother, and she sat in a shop all the way from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. because it was in a residential area, day in, day out, etc. And she had certain principles that she used to share with the children. It wasn't teaching us as in come and learn, but it was teaching us because of what she would make us do. She would turn around and say, go to my bedroom and bring my handbag to buy goods in her own shop. So all of that, whether it was a male or a female, it's teaching you the values in business. And I think that that's what we really need to be doing, is to be teaching our children how to be better business people, how to be better board members. And I think for ladies or for men, we should try and move away from, well, a woman would behave this way, a man thinks that way. It happens, and I've had the opportunities where, especially when I was younger, it was kind of like blue-eyed boy. You'd learned about this in business school, and so of course you're looking out amongst your team members. Oh, that's the blue-eyed boy, and then you would look and you'd find, another type of stereotype that we would have in the boardroom, and you would sort of allocate that to an individual. But with time, you actually learn that it's actually not about whether they're males or females. It's actually learning the business principles. So I believe that there isn't enough being done around this whole area of teaching, educating, giving people an opportunity. But I see even in academia, they're beginning to change from straightforward teaching people that this is how you do business, to actually having a year built onto that university where they're doing practical things, and there's a mentoring, and they're helping those individuals to be able to grow and know how to work in a business world. And as you do all of that, you're getting a balance, you will get a balance between business and the social aspects for both genders.
Absolutely. Applied learning, it's absolutely Member Matumo. I'm very cognizant of the time. I know that on the program it said we're finishing at 5 o'clock. Ludo did say that she'd give me 15 more minutes. Maserame Mouyeme, briefly, would you like to participate in this part of the discussion as we look at leading through the challenges of 2020 as we continue to maintain stability and balance and stay resilient. Would you like to give a stab at it before I close off by asking the First Lady to say something?
Yes, thank you. And I'll be brief. For me, resilience is about how one deals with negative situations and being able to transform them into what's workable for you without necessarily denying that those negatives are there. So, for example, when I joined Old Mutual at the beginning of this year, I did not know that I'd have to learn to work in a COVID setup. So I'd only met my colleagues for a few days, and South Africa imposed the lockdown from mid-March. So I'd only been in the office for 6 weeks, and Old Mutual is a big company with over 30,000 employees in 13 countries in South Africa and in China. So it was a very difficult time for me. But I told myself that I'm in this situation and I was going to have to learn and to be resilient and to adapt and learn about the business virtually, but also establish myself as a new leader virtually. So what I did was to focus on what was working. What did not work, I told myself that there's nothing I can do about it. So, for example, we have a lot of people based in Cape Town. Half of our exco as Old Mutual is based in Cape Town, half in Johannesburg. So, there are people that I had not been able to build rapport with, but I'm amazed as to how I've learned. And today I can call them, get advice, be able to drive the business forward, be in the middle of this pandemic and drive it and be trusted enough to pull it together from a community and stakeholder perspective with leaders that had not experienced me. So, resilience is something that's inside. And sometimes a crisis like COVID-19 brings out the best in us, where we have to just keep going, adapt very quickly, and work and see positivity in everything that happens on a day-to-day basis. So that's how I look at resilience. I don't think about the hardships. I kind of go, what's my outcome? What do I want to get out of this? And I put my whole being into it and make it work. And it's not perfect. It's never 100% of the outcome that I want, but I just work with what I have. And that's resilience for me at a personal level.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Mati.
Thank you. Adnan, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the fact that I haven't given you an opportunity to take a stab at that. Would you like to very, very fast do take a stab at that before I move on towards closure? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll be brief. First, I would love to congratulate the First Lady, Mrs. Masisi, for the amazing thing that she made for ending violence against women, for the cycling, and she looks very fit and very athletic. So I really love the campaign. The second thing that I would love to mention is why it is the Ending Violence Against Women campaign, while we're talking about women empowerment and involving women more and the gender equality, I believe that we are not in a competition with men, but we need to involve more men, as Katie said, and the other lady had said. We have to involve more men into our campaigns and our projects and our initiatives that we're doing, because they have to understand why we're asking them for empowerment, why we're asking them for help, why we're asking them for understanding. This is number one. And number two, we also, if we're talking about women empowerment, the major way to empower a woman, the major thing, number one, is sport. So we have to understand that we cannot bring a young girl from a normal environment or a very girlish environment, very protected environment, and telling her that you have to be strong. You have to face challenges. She cannot be strong unless she faces, she examines her strength, and that won't be without a physical examination, which is a sport. So I hope that in the future will be more collaboration between us in Kuwait and Botswana and the business sector and the sports sector. I'm really, I was really planning to do this last year, but unfortunately I was in the US for 1 month for Women in Peace and Security training. So I couldn't do it. And I was planning to do it this year, but the pandemic really had delayed all our jobs. So hopefully by next year, we will do all this thing and hope to see the First Lady and all of you ladies in Kuwait soon.
Sure. That gives me the perfect segue to actually move on to ask the First Lady if she would like to make any comments, if any. First Lady Masisi, Mama Masisi.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you, wonderful women, for all your very valuable contributions. We've learned a lot there. We've made mental notes, and we've actually taken notes. And as I had said when I was speaking, this is exactly what I expected. Stories, different perspectives. But at the end of the day, it's very interesting that it points to one. It points to our potentials. It points to our similar challenges. It points to working together. A lot of you have spoken about collaborations, and somebody actually said COVID-19 has shown that you cannot work alone. You just can't be sitting there in your own little island. But I'll close with something that I said earlier. Let us take up other ladies with us, because that's the difference between the men and us. Let us pick up these other ladies, especially the young ones. Let us tell them that they too have a space at that table. I was looking at the overall age groups that are represented here. Unless there's somebody who's a millennial there, and I can't really tell. But let's draw on these youngsters also. And I deliberately brought through these three ladies today for that very reason, because I realized that in the last 2 years, which is the period that I've spent in this space, I was more or less calling through women who have the experience, women who have had the opportunities, and going forward, I'll really be tapping on these young ones, more so that we also have a lot to learn from them. I'll mention the lady who's a mechatronics graduate. I never knew there was a field called mechatronics until I read about Tlamelo, who was the first Botswana to actually go to an African drone academy in Malawi. And I'm a little educated there. So we could also get quite a bit of education from the young ones. And then finally, let us continue with these W summits. We need not wait necessarily for this big bang November W Summit by DBS and the government of Botswana. Let us create these W Summits and empower other women. And as you rightly said, let us bring the boy child forward. We are finding that we've created this host or this population of very empowered women, but the boys are now fearful of these women. And that's why the boys and the men are using a different language, which is physical and violent. But to all of you, it was wonderful meeting you this afternoon and interacting. I could spend the whole afternoon with you, but I'm aware that for others, it's almost midnight. So we better call it a day. But thanks so much.
Thank you, First Lady Mama Masisi. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our distinguished guests who have come on this webinar. I'd like to thank everybody who has worked tirelessly behind the scenes. I'd like to thank the panelists who took their time to come and share with us such knowledge. And I just want to finish by saying at DBS, we do make life brilliant. And in Botswana, we usually say pula. Thank you very much. God bless you. And we will speak on the next occasion when we interact. Thank you. Mm.